Hello everyone, welcome to Citizen Survival Plan, and welcome back if you've been here before. Today, I want to talk about radios for your average person. We are a prepping channel here, so this is really what I'm geared toward. But I see so much discussion around the internet about what type of radio to get, how it works, should I get CB, should I do ham, should I get a MURS? And there's all kinds of discussion on this. And I want to share my thoughts on the different radio systems briefly, and then talk about why I love GMRS so much. It is my favorite, is the one system. If you were going to have one single radio system, it should be GMRS. Let's start with the different types of radios you can get into. There is ham radio. This is a very complex radio system to get into, but the sky is the limit. With range, it offers you the most range and capability. These things can tie into the internet. They can use repeaters. I mean, you name it, you can do it with ham. You can send data packets. You name it. It does everything. Ham is the best radio system to get into if you want to take the time to pass a test, pay for a license, and do all the study work it takes to get a ham license. I am not ham licensed. I have briefly started to do ham study. I may get my ham license at some point, but as I get into it, I could tell how difficult the test actually is. It asked you all kinds of questions about the ionosphere and stuff that I just don't feel like I actually need to know just to operate the radio. So it's a huge con. That test sucks. It's stupid. I don't even agree with even having to take it. If people want to use radio, they should just be able to be allowed to use it. It should be open to the public. Okay, these aren't in any particular order, but next is MURS. MURS is a license-free radio that operates on really low power. It's like a 2-watt radio, and it has a certain amount of channels. I think it's 8. I'm not a MURS person. I don't know much about MURS, but I think you get 8 channels, and it's limited to 2 watts, really low range, but there's no test, so you can use it. But for us preppers, we're not going to be able to operate around town with this. You're not going to be able to go 10, 15, 20 miles with this system. So that kind of cuts it out for me. I need to operate at least within a 10 or 15 mile range. So this is just out for me. So there is CB radio. This is sort of dead in my opinion. I don't know anybody that has a CB radio anymore. They were really popular in the 70s and 80s, but I do think they are a viable option. If you have a home setup with an external antenna on your roof, with an antenna mount, and a base station, and this is the other con with it, they're limited to 4 watts, but not exactly. You can get a radio that operates with 12 watts if you use SSB, single sideband, the single sideband inside the radio. It kind of operates in between the CB frequencies. You have to spend a little bit more money on this radio to operate that 12 watts, but again, it's also license free. So you get 12 watts, and CB is a little different than GMRS and some of the other stuff. It operates at a lower frequency. So you're limited in some power, but the frequency that it operates on, in my opinion, is a little better than GMRS. I'm just getting killed with that low power requirement. 12 watts is as high as I can go. I want you to also beware if anyone leaves comments on here saying that they can transmit across the country with CB and talk to someone in another country. This is very rare, and it's not like it is reliable communication. That is all luck when they're skipping their signal across the Atlantic or whatever they say they do. You talk to random people. It's not like you can set up a radio here and get another one 10, 15 miles away and hit it every time. That band bounces around a little bit, and it's a little bit unreliable when you go to those lengths. Another problem with CB, in my opinion, is the limited handheld options you have. I like to have my handhelds for my GMRS stuff hook into my headsets and hook to other mics and external stuff, and CB handhelds are super limited. There's really not even a lot of them you can buy, and the handhelds suck. Just the way that the frequency and the signal works, the handhelds will not go very far, as with the GMRS stuff, or if you had a ham handheld, it would go a lot further than a CB handheld. It's just not very good. It doesn't operate really good on that short radio antenna coming out of a handheld. CB radios really need big, tall, open antennas to work correctly. Okay, so we're going to get into GMRS. This is why I like it so much. And a lot of people say it's ham for dummies. And that's okay. I like that. It's nice and simple. It is a lot like a ham radio. It operates just on a certain fixed number of channels. As where a ham radio, you're kind of picking your frequencies that you're going to transmit on. GMRS is channelized. When I buy a GMRS radio, it's going to come with channels 1 to 22, and then you're going to have your repeater channels at the end. And we're going to get into that in a minute. So GMRS is awesome. You get your handheld radios that typically will operate with 5 watts. And again, they operate a little bit better than a CB from the handhelds, just because of the way the frequency works. It works a little bit better with handheld radios. So I can get a couple miles of range out of a handheld GMRS radio operating at 5 watts. And then with your base stations and your repeaters that you use in the GMRS channelized frequencies, you can go the entire way up to 50 watts. And a lot of people will comment that this is not necessary and using this much power isn't going to change anything. I mess with radios a ton. It is actually just one of my hobbies. I love messing with GMRS radios, and I push the limits of GMRS radio, and I am telling you, there are certain times, and in fact, my brother's house that I try and reach a town over from me. It's over a hill and then down in a valley, so really tough to reach. And we have to use B-Tech 50X1s and 50X2s to get there. I cannot reach him unless I am using at least 25 watts. So there is something to be said with power. Now, to utilize the entire power and capability of GMRS or ham or anything else, mostly ham and GMRS because you can use repeaters, but GMRS, a lot of people will get one and they'll transmit from the middle of a forest down in a valley or something and be like, oh, it only went a mile. To utilize the whole power and potential of GMRS, you kind of have to use the whole suite of products that you can. So your base stations, you can go up to 50 watts. A repeater, that can be a 10 watt repeater like I have, or you can use a 50 watt repeater, and then also your handheld. So you need to be able to use the whole suite of products and what GMRS is actually capable of. You can't just use a handheld and be like, it's not that great. You don't want to just only use the handhelds. Utilize all the tools it has to offer. If you want to watch a video on how to extend your range and how all this works, I actually do have a video on it. That's not what this video is about. So GMRS radios operate on the same channelized frequencies that your bubble pack radios you get from Walmart or Home Depot or wherever you're shopping, Amazon, those cheap little half-watt radios with the fixed duckbill antennas. They're not very good. They're called FRS radios. GMRS radios simply operate on those channels, but basically on steroids. So we can use a lot of other equipment, and we're using a lot more power. The GMRS radios, the handhelds, typically come with antennas that can be unscrewed and put back on, and you can use taller or shorter, better or worse antennas with it, depending on whatever you're trying to do. You cannot do that with FRS. So GMRS is FRS just on steroids. It uses a lot more power, and it uses a lot better equipment. The equipment that you're allowed to use with your GMRS license is a lot better. That is one note I want to make about GMRS is you do need a license for GMRS, but it's not like a ham license. You simply apply for it at the SCC website And it is like a fishing license. It just gets sent to you overnight, and it's good for 10 years, and it covers your whole family. So there's no test, there's no complicated studying for months on end to get your license. You simply pay, I think it's $35 for the license, and then you can have it. And everyone can get one. All the people you're trying to communicate with, just pay the $35 and you can use your radio. So if you are into preparedness, this is a lot of the reason that I love GMRS so much. It gives you exactly what most of us are looking for. A radio that can operate within a 20 to 30 mile radius, depending on where you live and your terrain. That way you can operate your radios during SHTF. And I want you to keep in mind, when you're looking for a radio system, I typically don't care about ham radio for this because I don't really care to talk to somebody, on the other side of the world or some alien in another galaxy. I just don't care. I don't need to do that. I need to communicate with the people around me, the people that are close enough to actually do something, to actually help me or me help them. I don't need to transmit that far. So getting my license for a ham radio is just, it's not necessary for me. And it's not necessary for a lot of us that are looking into just getting into a radio. So GMRS, the pros to it is I can operate anywhere from a half a watt to 50 watts. And I can use repeaters. Repeaters are a game changer when it comes to communications for preparedness, because I can set a repeater at a neutral location in the middle of where I'm trying to transmit, and it'll simply take my signal and boost it out further. So these are amazing. Ham radios can use this too. Again, you need that test and all that for it. This is amazing. Repeaters is definitely something you want to get into if you have a GMRS radio. I would recommend getting your own or building one yourself. That way you can set it where you need it to be set. The ones that exist, if you can even find a GMRS repeater, typically might not be in the correct location for you. You are going to need to be able to set your repeater where you want it to be set. I want to do a brief segment in this video about range on GMRS. So if you are in an open area and you have an antenna on top of your house, and your elevation is a little bit higher than the rest of your town, you can expect 10, 15, 20 miles out of this. If you have an antenna on top of a mountain overlooking a whole town, you are going to get the whole 30, 35 miles out of it, as long as you're using between 25 and 50 watts. For your handhelds, the biggest limitation to the handheld isn't so much that 5-watt radio, it's the antenna that it's on and the location that you're standing. If I am standing in a valley transmitting out trying to get a hold of somebody and I'm lower than everyone else, your radio is only going to go about a mile. So that is sort of the limitations on being your handheld. It's not so much the handheld, it's your location. I can get a handheld to communicate 10, 15 miles, no problem. And I've done it before standing on top of a mountain communicating down into the valley that I was communicating into. It talked on 10 watts with perfect signal. So a lot of times people misconstrue the power of the handheld and its limitations because it's small and limited power, but not necessarily where they're standing. So be smart about where you are. If you have a handheld and you're trying to operate around town, simply get on top of something. Stand up high where you can see, and you will most likely transmit and reach wherever you're trying to reach within a 10 or 15 mile radius. These are also limited by being in the woods. So if you're in the woods, typically what I'll see is 2 or 3 miles. The trees and the leaves and all the stuff in the way is just going to tamp that signal down. It's going to absorb a lot of that energy, and it's just not going to go as far. So that's my brief explanation on why I like GMRS so much. If you are into preparing or you just want a radio system you can communicate around town with, GMRS is the way to go. I think it fits most people's needs and is the best out of all of them. If I was going to only use one radio system, it would be GMRS. I also want to make one last note about GMRS is you are going to hear so much chatter during an emergency. Everyone has bubble packs of radios and they're all going to be trying to use them. You're going to hear so much on GMRS as you wouldn't hear on CB or anything else. Just consider the people that have ham radios are all going to be communicating with each other. You're not going to hear the average citizen moving around town and saying what's going on. You are going to hear that on GMRS. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.